Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 369. Thank you for joining me today. I've got a really good podcast for you today. Going to do the podcast today. Going to hopefully get to back to the Babylonian captivity, get into some of that history today. Going to hopefully on Monday get through talking about what takes place in Babylon and tie up a few loose ends from the Babylon captivity, talk about the conquest of the Persians over the Babylonians and the Cyrus the Great allowing the Jews to come back to Jerusalem and build the second temple. I don't know that I'm not that I don't know. I'm not going to do a podcast next Friday, but then when we come back on Monday, I want to get into some of the history of what takes place during the reign of Alexander the Great, the Diadochi Wars, and then get into the Seleucid Empire, the Hanukkah story a little bit, and then move on from there. That's the plan. So today I want to just tie up some of the loose ends from the last podcast. In the last podcast, we went into the persecutions of the Jews, the exiles of the Jews that have taken place all over the world. The Jews have been the most persecuted people throughout history, and they have been exiled from many countries and persecuted by first the Assyrians and then the Babylonians and then the Greeks, the Romans. When Islam comes on the scene, they suffer persecution from Islam. One of the points that I really wanted to emphasize in the last podcast is that if you look throughout the history of the Jews and their persecution, the persecutions that Jews have suffered at the hands of Christians, it's been more severe than any other group, quite frankly. That the blood of Jews, there's more blood on the hands of Christians, of Jews, than there is of Islam. And now Islam is the focus, and the jihadists and radical Islam and all of that. But Jews have suffered far more persecution from Christians, particularly in Europe. And that's what I wanted to, and what we talked about in the last podcast, talked about how they were persecuted in Europe during the bubonic plague. The plague was blamed on them. And then the Sephardic Jews flee to Poland, and then they're persecuted in Poland, in Germany, in Austria, in Russia. And then you have the Holocaust. And I was explaining to you that all of these persecutions that took place throughout Europe, they or what led to the Zionist movement, and the Zionists saying that we got to get out of Europe, got to find our own homeland. And they were looking at many different places for their homeland, but they ended up going back to their ancestral homeland in Palestine, the Levant, and the rest is history. But today, the threat to Jews is no longer Christians. I mean, for centuries it was Christians, but now it's Islam. And we had the attack in the last week in Australia. It was just the latest attack. There's been many attacks on Jews by radical Islamists, and I want to follow up on some things in that I didn't get to in the last podcast, and kind of, like I said, tie up some loose ends. This is a meme that was going around after the attack in Australia, the Bondi Beach attack last week, and it is talking about Islam. And I've been very clear. I've been very clear about Islam, that I believe Islam is not compatible with the West for many reasons. But I also know that much of our foreign policy over the last 25 years has caused Islam and Islamists to migrate into the West in higher numbers because of refugee crises that have taken place, because of our foreign policy, what we did in Iraq. What we did in Iraq was huge because that caused a huge refugee crisis. Foreign policy in Syria, supporting the FSA, which became ISIS, it contributed to a lot of the refugee crisis and the fact that many of these Muslims had to, flee to the West for refuge. So I don't believe that Islam is compatible with the West. I believe that Islam, and they'll tell you, you'll listen to them, and they'll tell you that the eventual goal is for Islam to conquer the whole world. That is the goal of Islam, to conquer the whole world. So I don't believe that Islam is compatible with the West, but I believe that because of our foreign policy and the foreign policy of the globalists that have driven all of these Islamists into the West, you have a huge problem with the invaders migrating into the West. And some of them are peaceful Muslims that just want to live in peace, and some of them are radical jihadists. And how do you know the difference? And that's what this meme is about. The meme says there's one guy, he's got ants all over him, and he says, "Help, I'm being bitten to death by ants." And the smug liberal says, "Well, not all ants. It's not all Muslims. It's just, you're being bitten to death." And Laura Loomer, who is a Jewish woman who advocates for Israel, she's the one who posted this, but it was going around. And it's making fun of the people that says, well, no, it's not all Muslims. Some Muslims are good people. Some Muslims just want to, live their lives in peace. Can you tell the difference between the bad Muslims that want to destroy your society and the good Muslims? How can you tell the difference between the good ants that are biting me to death or the bad ants that are biting me to death and the good ants that just want to live their lives in peace? So this is the meme. Help, I'm being bitten to death by ants. Well, not all ants. Help, I'm being attacked by Muslims. Well, not all Muslims. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this meme and make reference to this meme, because the same can be said about the Jewish people. The same can be said about the Jewish people. Not all Jewish people are good people. There's some very evil Jewish people. And you can't really tell the difference in the good Jews and the bad Jews, but there are some bad Jews. And it would be idiotic of you to believe that there are not some bad Jews, some Jews that have a ideology that is, bad, that is a evil ideology. There are some Jews that have an evil ideology and that are bad Jews. Not all Jews, just like not all ants, not all Muslims, but there are some Jews that are evil people. There absolutely are. And how do you distinguish between the good Jews and the bad Jews? Just like anybody, there's black people that are good people and bad people. There's white people who are good people and bad people. There's Muslims that are good people and bad. There's Christians that are good people and bad people. And yes, there's Muslims that are good people and bad people. And that's what I've tried to explain from the beginning of talking and doing this series of podcasts, is that you can't blame all Jews and say that it's all Jews that are bad. But yes, there are some bad Jews. There are some evil Jews. There are some Jews that worship demonic spirits. Absolutely, without a doubt. There's some bad Christians. There's some bad black people, some bad white people. Not all. It's not all the ants that are biting you, but there's some. And how do you tell the difference? And that's why I wanted to go into and explain the difference, like I did in the last podcast, the difference between Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazi Jews and Mizrahi Jews and Belhi Jews, Jews in India, Jews in in China, Jews in sub-Saharan Africa. Not all Jews are the same. Not all white people are the same. Not all black people are the same. Not all Christians are the same. Not all Muslims are the same. And I think that this meme that Laura Loomer tweeted out, yeah, she's talking about Muslims, but this could go for Jews as well. That there are some Jews that have a very satanic globalist worldview, who don't believe in the God of their forefathers, just like we've been talking about what brought about God's anger against the Jews, that brought about the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity, that it was divine punishment because of their idol worship. When Manasseh was the king of Judah and he was leading the people into idol worship and occult worship and necromancy and sorcery and all that stuff, not all the Jews participated in that. Some of the Jews, a remnant, a small group of Jews in Judah, they maintained their loyalty to the God of their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They didn't participate in idolatry and sorcery and necromancy. So it wasn't all Jews, but it was some. And this could be said, this meme that she tweeted talking about Muslims could be said about Jews as well. It's not all Jews, but some. It's some Jews. This is a meme that, or this is a video that this guy put out, and it gets to the point that I'm trying to make here. I want you to listen to what he says here.
The Jews are chosen. So Chinese Jews? Not those Jews. Black Jews? Not those Jews. Iranian Jews? Not those Jews. I don't understand. A Jew from Yemen is still a Jew. Ish. Well, what Jews do you mean? Oh, I think you know. Epstein? Epstein? You still talking about Epstein? The guy's been dead. No, I don't know. The chosen ones. So white Jews. We're not white. White.
So what Jews are you talking about? The chosen ones? The Balhai Jews? The Mizrahi Jews? The Sephardic Jews? The Chinese Jews? The Indian Jews? Which Jews are you talking about? And I think that this video gets to the heart of what I am trying to say. Yes, Jews have suffered persecution, major persecution for millennia, like I said in the last podcast, mostly at the hands of Christians. For centuries in Europe, at the hands of Christians, persecution of the Jews. Now it's the Muslims, persecution. They suffered persecution under the Romans, under the Greeks, under the Assyrians, under the Babylonians. But I think that it's very important to understand that there are wicked, evil Jews, just like there's wicked, evil people of every religion, every ethnicity. And I think that it's important to say that and to talk. And when we were talking about in the last podcast, the persecution of the Jews that has taken place over millennia, particularly in the persecution that took place under Christians in Europe that initiated the Zionist movement, Jews saying that we got to find our own homeland. We got to find our own a nation to get away from all of this persecution. I was saying that a lot of this persecution, it's talked about in the Bible. The Bible in Deuteronomy 4 says that when you start worshiping idols and setting up idols and worshiping false gods, that God is going to scatter you from the land and you're going to go into these other regions. This is in Deuteronomy 4, and you're going to be persecuted. And you're going to suffer in persecution in these foreign lands where God drives you. That's what it says. And I was saying in the last podcast that Jews were never meant to live outside of the region there in current Israel, and they were never supposed to live outside of the protection of their God. The essence of what it means to be a Jew is to be chosen, one of the chosen, the ancestor of Abraham, and to be protected by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have a few passages here that I want to read a little bit of. This is Psalms 91. And many of Jewish people now, particularly after the terrorist attack that took place in Australia, they're like, no place is safe for us. No place is safe for us. I mean, we're under attack everywhere. Well, Psalms 91 says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge, my fortress, my God, whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the foul snare, from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear or fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall by your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. That God will protect you, will protect his people. That's what I'm saying, that the Jewish people were never supposed to live out to God. Gave the land of Israel as a sanctuary where he was going to protect them and they were going to have refuge as long as they kept the covenant. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent, for he will command the angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against the stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra, and will trample the great lion and the serpent, because he loves me, says the Lord. I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me and I will answer. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is a psalm, the 91st psalm. Here's another psalm, the 121st psalm. I lift up my eyes to the mountain. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of the heavens and earth. I will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he will watch over Israel and will neither slumber or sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, and the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. Let me read that again. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forever. It's a 121st Psalm. One more. And there's several of these. The 27th Psalm. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. And whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. One thing that I ask of the Lord, this do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all of the days of my life, that I will dwell in the house of the Lord all of the days of my life. That Jews were never meant to live outside of the refuge of the land of Israel. They were never supposed to live outside in all of these places where they're being persecuted. I'm sorry. This is what the Bible says. To gaze the beauty of the Lord and to seek him is my temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me on a high rock. Then my head will be exalted above my enemies that surround me. At his sacred tent, I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call upon the Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, O Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servants away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, the Lord, my Savior. Though my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, O Lord. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in the straight path because of my oppressors. Lead me in the straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desires of my foes, or false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart and wait for the Lord. So that's the point that I was trying to make in the last podcast when I was saying that, yes, the Jews have suffered persecution in all these places. They've suffered exile in all these places for millennia, at the hands of the Romans, at the hands of the Christians, at the hands of the Muslims now. And they were never supposed to live outside of the land that God set up for them, where he said that I will be your refuge. I will make you safe here. But he also said that you have to keep the covenant. You can't be worshiping other gods. You can't be setting up idols. You can't be practicing witchcraft. You can't be practicing sorcery. And not all Jews do, but some of them do. Yeah, it's not all Jews that practice witchcraft and sorcery and have turned away from God, but some of them do. The Jews were not supposed to live in the land like this. They weren't, the land of Israel was never supposed to be a secular. When I said that the Jews were never supposed to be, to live outside of the land where God gave them refuge, it was never supposed to be a secular refuge at all. God did not set it up to be a secular refuge. And the secular state of Israel is unbiblical. I'm sorry. They're not supposed to be having gay pride parades in Tel Aviv. Look at this. This is not supposed to be what the way that they live in the land. Now, as I said in the last podcast, that they've been persecuted and suffered persecution for millennia in all these different places, and they were never supposed to live outside of the land, but they were never supposed to live in the land and be disobedient to God. They weren't supposed to be having gay pride parades in Tel Aviv. Look at this. Jerusalem Post. Is Tel Aviv the gay capital of the world? Tel Aviv Pride is amongst the biggest annual pride events in the world. Now, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's one of if you read the Bible and you see that pride is one of the things that God hates above anything. The Bible says that pride comes before the fall. And they have the biggest pride parades there in Tel Aviv. It's Tel Aviv, the gay capital of the world. Jerusalem Post. NPR here. Israel presents itself as a haven for the gay community. A haven for the gay community. Now, this is only one example of how Israel, the current state of Israel, the secular state of Israel, is not in accordance with what the Bible says that the state of Israel should be, that they have, in many cases, turned themselves against God. Now, not all Jews, not all of them, but some of them have. Some of them have. Israel presents itself as a haven for the gay community. Israel, the gayest country on earth, times of Israel. So they have pride parades in Israel, and they, quite frankly, many of the people in Israel don't honor the God of their forefathers, don't worship the God of their forefathers. Many of them practice witchcraft, sorcery, and occult worship to this day in Israel. Now, when I say that that Jews were never supposed to live outside of the land, and that God would give them refuge and safety in that land. They weren't supposed to be in the land living the way that they're living in the land today, and to be turning their backs on God the way the kingdom of Israel did and the kingdom of Judah did in the time of the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity. And so, yes, Jews have been persecuted and they have experienced persecution throughout the world for millennia, and that God says that I will be your refuge. I will give you safety. I will protect you in the land, but only if you are keeping the covenant. And the nation of Israel, yes, the Jews were supposed to be in the land, but it was never supposed to be a secular nation, a nation that turns their back on the God of their forefathers, the nation that has gay pride parades, the gayest country on earth. It was never supposed to be that at all. Never supposed to be that. I've played this clip before, but this is a clip of Christian pastor Billy Graham having a conversation with the President of the United States, Richard Nixon. And he says that there's two different types of Jews, is what Billy Graham says here. It's not all Jews. Help, I'm being bitten to death by ants. Not all ants. It's not all Muslims. It's not all Jews. But what Billy Graham is telling Richard Nixon here is there's two different types of Jews that the Bible speaks of. The Bible speaks of two different types of Jews. Let's listen to Billy Graham tell Richard Nixon this again.
You see, the Bible makes a distinction, Mr. President, between two groups of Jews. One is called the Synagogue of Satan. There's two different kinds.
The Bible, this is what Billy Graham says. Evangelical pastor Billy Graham says that the Bible says that there's two different types of Jews. One, the Bible calls the Synagogue of Satan. Now, where does Billy Graham get this from, where the Bible calls this one group the Synagogue of Satan? Well, he gets it from the revelation of Jesus Christ, the revelation of Jesus Christ given to the Apostle John. And this is called the revelation of Jesus Christ. These are the words of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is revealing this to the Apostle John. And in the second chapter, verse 9 of the revelation of Jesus Christ, the words of Jesus Christ, it says, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews but are not. Let me read that again. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews but they are not. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews. Now, who are these people? I don't know who these people are. Who are these people that say they are Jews, but Jesus says that they are not? Who are these people that claim to be Jews, but Jesus says that they are not? Who are they? Is it the Mormons? Is it the Beta Israel? Is it the Sephardic Jews? Is it the Mizrahi Jews? The Balhai Jews? Is it the black Israel, black Hebrew Israelites that say that they're Jews? Who are these Jews that Jesus is talking about in the 9th verse of the 2nd chapter of the revelation of Jesus Christ? I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews, but they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. This is what Pastor Billy Graham is talking about when he says the synagogue of Satan. These people that claim to be Jews, that say they are Jews, but are not, they're of the synagogue of Satan. This is from Jesus Christ. This is the words of Jesus Christ. And then any biblical scholar will tell you the significance of this, that it repeats itself. In the very next chapter, that Jesus repeats himself in the 3rd chapter, 9th verse. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not. He repeats himself. And that's hugely significant. Any Bible scholar will tell you this. That is hugely significant for Jesus to repeat himself in the 2nd chapter. And then there weren't chapters when he gives this revelation. There were no chapters. So this is just in a matter of lines of the revelation that Jesus is saying the same thing over again, repeating himself and saying it over again. 2:9, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews, they are not, but they are of the synagogue of Satan. And then 3:9, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, but they are not. Who is he talking about? Who is this? Is this the Sephardic Jews, the Ashkenazi, the Baha'i Jews, the Mizrahi Jews? Who is he talking about? I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. These are the words of Jesus Christ, the revelation of Jesus Christ. He says it twice here, that there are Jews who claim to be Jews, but they're not Jews. They're liars, and they are really of the synagogue of Satan. They worship Satan, synagogue of Satan. And that's what Billy Graham is telling Richard Nixon here, that the Bible says that there's two different types of Jews. There's two different. There are those Jews that honor God and keep God's commandments, keep God's covenant. They worship the God of their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But then there are those Jews who claim to be Jews, but they're liars. They're not Jews. And they're of the synagogue of Satan. Is what Billy Graham is telling President Richard Nixon.
You see, the Bible makes a distinction, Mr. President, between two groups of Jews. One is called the Synagogue of Satan. There are two different kinds. And those people, in the latter days, it's called the remnant of God's people, which will be Jewish people. And then there's the Synagogue of Satan. And nearly all of your religious deceptions in the latter days, what the Bible speaks, latter days will be 1,000 years, what they call the Synagogue of Satan. In other words, they are energized by supernatural power called
now, all of the religious deception in the latter days is from the Synagogue of Satan, Billy Graham says.
The remnant of God's people, which will be Jewish people. And then there's the Synagogue of Satan. And nearly all of your religious deceptions in the latter days, what the Bible speaks, latter days will be 1,000 years, what they call the Synagogue of Satan. In other words, they are energized by supernatural power called the devil. This is what the Bible teaches, whether you believe it or don't believe it. This is the biblical teaching, and this is what I believe. And I believe that they have a strange brilliance about them. They're smart, and they are energized, in my judgment, by supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else. They're not smart.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't. They had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany. And the media, they had the whole thing, you see.
And it sounds like that Richard Nixon and Billy Graham here are justifying, giving a reason by why Hitler invaded Poland and persecuted the Jews there. I mean, this is what it sounds like. It sounds like they're justifying what Hitler did, that they're smart and they had he says they have a stranglehold on the banking in Germany. And then Nixon says, and the media. He says they had Billy Graham, they had a stranglehold on the banking in Germany. And then the president of the United States, Richard Nixon, says, and the media. And I don't think it's in this clip, but then he goes in and says that the Synagogue of Satan is responsible for all the pornography and all this stuff, is what he says here. I don't know if it's in this clip where he talks about the pornography, but if you listen to the longer clip, he says that they're responsible for all the pornography too, is what Billy Graham says.
They have a strange brilliance about them. They're smart, and they are energized, in my judgment, by supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else. They're not smart.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't. They had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany. And the media, they had the whole thing.
Now, he's not. Listen, I want to make you understand and have you understand that he's not talking about all the Jews. Not all the Jews. Help, I'm being bitten to death by ants. Not all the ants. And Billy Graham and Richard Nixon, they're not talking about all the Jews. They're talking about only the Jews. And how do you know who those Jews are? I don't know who the difference of the Jews are. I don't know which Jews that practice a witchcraft and participate in Satanism in private. And that's what a cult means. A cult means secret and private, what they do. I mean, it would be, I don't know who they are, but what I want you to understand is that Richard Nixon and Billy Graham are not talking about all the Jews. They're talking about a select group of Jews who the Bible calls the Synagogue of Satan, a select group of Jews who Jesus says in the revelation of Jesus Christ that they are Jews who say they are Jews, but are not. They're liars, and they're of the Synagogue of Satan. They're not talking about all the Jews had a stranglehold on the banking in Germany. Not all the Jews controlled all the media in Germany. That's not what Billy Graham and Richard Nixon are saying here. They're saying that there's a select group. I don't know who this group is, but they're of the Synagogue of Satan. And they're the ones who had a stranglehold on the banking in Germany and controlling the media and in the pornography and all the stuff that Billy Graham is saying here. They're the ones, this select group are of the Synagogue of Satan is what they're talking about.
And they are energized, in my judgment, by a supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else. They're not inspired.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't, they had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany. And the media, they had the whole thing, you see. But he went about it wrong. But this stranglehold has got to be broken, or this country is going to go down the drain. Yes, sir.
So he's talking, when he says that stranglehold, he's talking about Germany, and he says that Hitler handled it wrong, but he says, then he starts talking about the United States. He said that stranglehold has to be broken on this country, on the United States, or this country is going to go down the drain. Billy Graham, this is what Billy Graham says.
Went about it wrong. But this stranglehold has got to be broken, or this country is going to go down the drain.
This country,
yes,
country, United States.
I can't ever say it, but I believe it.
Nobody gets elected the second time. We might be able to do something.
So this is when Nixon in his first terms, and he says that if you're elected in your second term, you might be able to do something. It's Billy Graham, conversation between Billy Graham and Richard Nixon. Wow. All right, let's get back into the Babylonian captivity and wrap this up, and then we'll pick this up back up in the next podcast. So first chapter of the book of Daniel starts talking about the Babylonian captivity, and he starts talking about the very first, now the siege of Jerusalem, the siege of the kingdom of Judah by the king Nebuchadnezzar. It went in three different stages over a span of 20 years. Now, in the first stage, Nebuchadnezzar comes, he surrounds Jerusalem, and he forces King Jehoiakim to release a few of the most prominent men in Judah and allow Nebuchadnezzar to take them back to Babylon so they can study the Chaldean religion and the Aramaic language, and King Joachim agrees, and he gives the few of the most prominent nobility of Judah to Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar takes these individuals back to Babylon. So this is what Daniel talks about here in the first chapter, the first verse of the book of Daniel. It says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, along with some of the articles of the temple of God. In the very first two actual sieges over this 20-year period, Nebuchadnezzar raids the temple and takes all the gold, but he doesn't destroy the temple completely. So that's what Daniel is talking about here. The Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, along with some articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his own God in Babylonia, and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, king of his court, talking about King Nebuchadnezzar, the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's servants some of the Israelites from the royal family and nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve the king's palace, to serve Nebuchadnezzar. He was to teach them the language and literature, the Chaldean language and the Chaldean religion of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Among them who were chosen were some of Judah. Among them who were chosen were some of Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. So Daniel, and then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nebuchadnezzar gave them all Babylonian names, and they had to stop using their Hebrew names. So Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah were their Hebrew names, and then Nebuchadnezzar gave them the name Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The chief official gave them new names, and to Daniel, Belshazzar was the Babylonian name that he gave to Daniel. Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food, didn't want to eat any food that wasn't kosher. It goes into what happened when they didn't want to eat any of the food that wasn't kosher. And then we'll get more into the book of Daniel and what happened when they were in Babylon in the next podcast. These are some clips that go into the sieges of King Nebuchadnezzar and how he eventually, in the last siege, destroys the temple, destroys Jerusalem, and destroys the entire city forever until they come back and rebuild the city. And we'll talk about that in the next podcast. But we're going to finish up with these clips. Take a listen.
In 605 BC, his troops surrounded Jerusalem, but did not attack. Instead, the king made an offer that seemed generous. "Give me a few noble young men to study in Babylon, and the city will remain at peace." King Jehoiakim accepted immediately. It seemed like a favorable deal: preserve the city in exchange for just a few young men. But Nebuchadnezzar had a different intention. Daniel 1:3-4 records that he ordered the capture of some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, the most promising youth in all of Jerusalem. Jehoiakim believed he had made a good deal, but Nebuchadnezzar wasn't after mere hostages. He wanted to break Jerusalem's future. By taking the brightest minds, he ensured the next generation of leaders would grow up under Babylonian, not Jewish, influence. And there was more. By accepting the deal, Jehoiakim declared himself a vassal of Babylon. Unknowingly, he handed over not just the youth, but also the political and moral control of the city. Jerusalem had lost its independence without even realizing it. Nebuchadnezzar's first strike wasn't military, but psychological, and it worked perfectly. But 3 years later, one mistake changed everything. Jehoiakim, the former king, had rebelled. As punishment, he was removed from the throne, and his successor, Jehoiakim, a mere 18-year-old, took his place.
All right, so the first siege, Nebuchadnezzar surrounds the city of Jerusalem. He forces Jehoiakim to release some of the most noble men, the future of Jerusalem, to the king to take back to Babylon, that they will be raised in Babylon. And then he leaves, and then Jehoiakim rebels against Nebuchadnezzar. So 3 years later, then Nebuchadnezzar comes back, takes Jehoiakim off of the throne, and then puts Jehoiakim, very similar names. I think it was his son on the throne.
Joachim, the former king, had
Jehoiakim.
rebelled. As punishment, he was removed from the throne, and his successor, Jehoiakim, a mere 18-year-old, took his place. However, his reign would last only 3 months. In March of 597 BC, Nebuchadnezzar returned, this time in full force. He personally led his army, and there was no room for negotiation. From atop the walls, the young king saw a sea of soldiers stretching as far as the eye could see. According to 2 Kings 24:10-11, at that time, the officers of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, advanced on Jerusalem, and the city came under siege. What happened next was unprecedented in the history of the Holy City. On the 3rd day of the siege, Jehoiakim made a decision no king of Judah had ever made. He opened the gates and surrendered voluntarily. 2 Kings 24:12 recounts, "Then Jehoiakim, king of Judah, his mother, his attendants, his nobles, and his officials all surrendered to the king of Babylon." Nebuchadnezzar was surprised. He had expected resistance, but found total surrender. His strategy of progressive siege had worked. He broke the city's morale without firing a single arrow. Fear proved more effective than any battering ram. Taking advantage of the surrender, the Babylonian king entered the temple of the Lord for the first time.
So this is when he loots the temple on this second siege of Jerusalem. He loots. This is actually really the first siege, because the first time he doesn't really siege the city. He just forces Jehoiakim to give him the young men to take back to Babylon. But this is his second time coming to Jerusalem, and on this second time, they open the gates. He comes in and he loots the temple. He doesn't destroy the temple, but he loots the temple, takes all the gold, takes it back to Babylon.
Single arrow. Fear proved more effective than any battering ram. Taking advantage of the surrender, the Babylonian king entered the temple of the Lord for the first time, carrying off sacred utensils and filling around 50 carts with gold and silver. But his most valuable trophy was King Jehoiakim himself, taken alive to Babylon as a symbol of total victory. The king of Jerusalem had now become a prisoner of war. This was the second time Nebuchadnezzar humiliated Jerusalem, but it wasn't the end. He didn't execute Jehoiakim because he had an even smarter plan. Instead of killing the young king, he applied a tactic that had already brought other nations to ruin: mass deportation of the city's main leaders, nobles, and skilled workers. It was the beginning of a deeper strategy, to hollow out Jerusalem from within.
All right, so this is the beginning of the exile. When Nebuchadnezzar raids the city the second time, they open the gates, they let him in, he loots the temple, and then he takes anyone of any prominence at all, anyone who had any wealth, anyone who had any knowledge of how to run a city, how to run the day-to-day operations of the city, anyone who had any influence, anyone who was had any esteem or anything. He takes all of these people back to Babylon as captives. And this is what is called the Babylonian captivity, when he takes all of these people from Judah back to Babylon, anyone of any prominence. Now, he doesn't take everyone. He leaves the poor people, the people that don't have any education, the people that don't know how to do anything. He leaves those people, but anyone who had any prominence, any knowledge, any intellectual aptitude, he takes all of those people, thousands of people, 7,000 to 10,000 people, back to Babylon. And this becomes very important because those are the type of people that are in Babylon when we get into the next podcast and we start talking about what those people do in Babylon and how those people survive in Babylon and how those people start questioning what's happening to them. And then those are the people that eventually are freed by the Persians and are able to come back years later to rebuild the city. But this is the second siege. He still hasn't destroyed the temple yet. And Nebuchadnezzar takes all of these people, 7,000 to 10,000 people, back to Babylon. It was anyone of any prominence.
Mass deportation of the city's main leaders, nobles, and skilled workers. It was the beginning of a deeper strategy, to hollow out Jerusalem from within, to break its heart, its identity, and its future. According to 2 Kings 24:14, Nebuchadnezzar carried into exile all Jerusalem, all the officers and fighting men, 10,000 in all, as well as all the skilled workers and artisans. Only the poorest people of the land were left. These 10,000 deportees were not just anyone. They were the city's elite. The Babylonian king was surgical. He took away the leaders, the intellectuals, the craftsmen, and the soldiers. Everyone who knew how to rule, build, or fight was ripped from Jerusalem. Among them was the prophet Ezekiel, who would later vividly describe the final destruction of the holy city. The plan was brilliant in its cruelty, to leave behind only peasants, shepherds, and simple folk, people without the means or knowledge to organize a rebellion. In Jehoiachin's place, Nebuchadnezzar installed his uncle Zedekiah on the throne, a puppet king, weak, submissive, and entirely controlled from Babylon.
All right, so he takes even the king, all the people that were any intellectual, all the elite, takes them back into Babylon. This is the Babylonian captivity, and then the Babylonian exile, and then Zedekiah he puts on the throne as this puppet king, and then Zedekiah ends up rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar again 11 years later, and then Nebuchadnezzar comes back 11 years later, and this is the final siege when he destroys everything, and even destroys the temple, destroys the entire city. Take a listen.
In January 588 BC, Nebuchadnezzar began the final siege. But unlike previous campaigns, this time he wasn't seeking submission or tribute. He wanted total annihilation. According to 2 Kings 25:1, in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army. He encamped outside the city and built siege works all around it. This was no improvised siege. It was a masterpiece of military engineering, a city surrounded by another city. Nebuchadnezzar built a wall around all of Jerusalem. Nothing, no people, no animals, no food could enter or leave. Jeremiah 52:4 describes it. Siege.
I want you to notice too how the different books of the Bible that reference and talk about the Babylonian captivity. You get a little bit from the book of Kings, you get a little bit from Ezekiel, you get a little bit from Jeremiah, you get a little bit from Daniel, and it all tells the overall story. All these different books written by different people tell the entire story of the Babylonian captivity.
Jerusalem. Nothing, no people, no animals, no food could enter or leave. Jeremiah 52:4 describes it. Siege works were built all around it, and the city was under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. The Babylonian king divided his troops into 24-hour shifts. While one group attacked the walls, the other rested. The pressure was constant, day and night, without pause. But the most brilliant part was that Nebuchadnezzar was in no rush. He knew time was on his side. Jerusalem had supplies for a few months. He had resources for years. Jerusalem was demoralized, its morale crushed. Its army was starving and desperate. Meanwhile, Nebuchadnezzar's soldiers were motivated by the promise of plunder. With each passing week, Jerusalem weakened, and Babylon grew stronger. It was a simple equation. Hunger would kill the defenders before fatigue affected the attackers. Jerusalem trusted in its massive stone walls, which had withstood invaders for centuries. But the Babylonian king had studied every brick, every weak spot, and had a flawless plan to bring them down. In previous sieges, Babylon's engineers had meticulously studied every vulnerable point, every crack and angle in Jerusalem's defenses. The walls, 12 meters tall and 6 meters thick, were formidable, but not invincible. Nebuchadnezzar brought his most advanced siege machinery to the battlefield, massive battering rams mounted on mobile towers, catapults launching incendiary projectiles, and trained diggers working to destabilize the foundations. Jeremiah 32:24 records, "The Babylonians are attacking the city and will capture it. The city will be given into the hands of the enemy." The strategy was precise and calculated. Attack 3 points at once: the northern gate, which was more vulnerable, the eastern tower, the highest, and the southern base, built on rock. While the rams battered the gates, diggers tunneled beneath the walls, and catapults kept the defenders at bay with a constant barrage of stone and fire. For months, it seemed the walls would hold, but Nebuchadnezzar did not rely solely on brute force. He relied on precision. Each blow from the battering rams created micro cracks. Each stone from the catapults wore down the mortar. Each meter dug undermined the structure. Little by little, the seemingly impenetrable began to crumble. And once the walls fell, massacre would be inevitable. But perhaps the most cruel weapon of the Babylonian king was hunger. In the first month, the city began rationing food. By the third, tree bark became a meal. By the sixth, they boiled leather from sandals to trick their stomachs, according to 2 Kings 25:3. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for the people to eat. And that was only the beginning of the horror. Lamentations 4:10 records the unthinkable. "With their own hands, compassionate women have cooked their own children, who became their food when my people were destroyed." Mothers resorting to cannibalism, families fighting over moldy crumbs, corpses piling up in the streets,
All right, so they eventually break down the walls, and the Babylonians come in and they take the city. I want to play this last bit that talks about the destruction of the temple. And this is very important. So Nebuchadnezzar had already taken all of these prominent people back into exile that are held captive in Babylon. And then he destroys the temple. The temple was the center of their culture. This is Solomon's temple. For centuries, from the time of Solomon when this temple was built, Solomon's temple was the center of their culture, the center of everything that it meant to be a Israelite, a Judean, a member of the kingdom of Judah. Everything about them, to be Jewish, to be Hebrew, to be anything that who they were was centered with the temple. The temple was the center of their culture, and Nebuchadnezzar destroys Solomon's temple. It's very important that you understand this.
But Nebuchadnezzar's mission was not yet complete. His next target was Israel's spiritual center. He had deliberately left the temple for last, with a clear goal: to crush the soul of the people. Solomon's temple was not just a building. It represented the presence of God among the Jews. To destroy it would be a symbolic declaration that the God of Israel had abandoned them. On August 5th, 586 BC, the Babylonian captain Nebuzaradan entered the temple with lit torches and demolition tools. According to 2 Kings 25:9, he set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. Before setting it ablaze, they looted everything of value. The bronze pillars, Jachin and Boaz, were shattered. The massive sea of bronze, which weighed about 30 tons, was smashed with hammers. Jeremiah 52:17 lists the plunder. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars, the movable stands, and the bronze sea at the temple of the Lord, and carried the bronze to Babylon. Cups, basins, golden and silver lampstands filled 200 carts. But what even stunned Nebuchadnezzar's own soldiers was the final order: to burn the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place on earth. Within hours, the fire consumed everything. The flames raged for 3 days, and the smoke could be seen 50 kilometers away. Jews hiding in the mountains watched in horror, knowing they were witnessing the end of an era. Lamentations 2:7 expresses this pain. The Lord has rejected his altar and abandoned his sanctuary.
The Lord has rejected his altar and abandoned his sanctuary, is what Lamentation says.
Witnessing the end of an era. Lamentations 2:7 expresses this pain. The Lord has rejected his altar and abandoned his sanctuary. He has given the walls of her palaces into the hands of the enemy. 1,000 years of sacred history were reduced to ashes in just 3 days. And yet, the destruction of the temple was only the beginning. The true massacre would begin afterward. Now reflect, is God just?
All right, so that is the Babylonian captivity, folks. And we're going to talk in the next podcast about what took place in Babylon, what these people did while they were in exile. The people that were in exile in Babylon, again, were the intellectuals, the elite, the most prominent people of Judah, who 11 years before the total destruction, Nebuchadnezzar had already taken back to Babylon. We're going to talk about what happened to those people. We're going to talk about Daniel and his prophecies and all that stuff in the next podcast. And then eventually the Persians conquering the Babylonians and then allowing those people to come back to Jerusalem, rebuild the city, rebuild the temple. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.